So this is a little bit of self-advocacy. I'm Nick St. Clair.
And I'm Bob Schroes.
And thank you guys. First of all, I want to say thank you, thank you, Jim Worcester, and the people of the New Avenue Foundation for letting us come in and do our first speech since the pandemic had started in March.
Yeah.
And what this speech is going to entail is a bit of self-advocacy, where we have 4 questions that have to do with self-advocacy and how we use our self-advocacy to overcome our challenges of autism. So, and it also entails some audience questions for the in-person and the virtual watchers. So, for any of the watchers in this speech today, if you guys have any questions you guys want to write down while we talk, feel free to grab a pencil or a pen and paper and write down a question for us as we talk. And when we get through the 4 questions, we'll let you guys ask the questions. We'll let your voices contribute to our speech. So, without further ado, here is a little bit of self-advocacy with myself, Robert Schmuss.
Yep.
So, Bobby, I want to ask you this question first. About self-advocacy, how do you describe what self-advocacy means to you?
Well, for me, it's a big term. So when you think about advocacy, it's advocating for something. And self-advocacy is advocating for yourself. Now, in life, there's many things people want to achieve. Things that they want to work towards, things that they want to do well in, things that they want to make themselves useful in life. And in order for someone to receive those things, especially when those who are autistic like you and I are, things like that must be advocated for, such as like knowing thyself as well, like knowing what our interests are, what are things we want to do, what are the things that we feel will make us useful in life, and advocating for that.
Were there actually any obsessions that you had as a kid that helped you out through life?
Well, one of the things that I was obsessed with, even to this day, was culture, travel, history, music, and the arts. Like, I've always loved historical facts, visiting museums, visiting like historical places. I love the history of rock music and different bands. Also, like, I'm painting. I also love traveling, domestic and abroad, and actually knowing those interests to me have made something that I feel makes me who I am. Like, I've always wanted to learn. I'm an avid learner ever since I was a young kid, and those interests have made me feel so good about myself, and it's given me the confidence I need.
It sounds like you had a lot of obsessions that have helped you through your life.
Oh yeah.
Have you shown them off?
Well, at first, when I was younger, I kind of like, in a sense, sort of kept them to myself, because I was always afraid that, these restricted interests, like, I was always afraid people would find them boring. Like, I was afraid, I'll bore someone talking about this, I'll bore someone, but then, as time went on, especially when I was in college, those type of things, and expressing them to others, helped me gain confidence in myself.
That's really awesome, man. For me, what self-advocacy would mean to me, self-advocacy means to me is that, well, I can put it in a story. I remember when I was 2 years old and I was diagnosed with autism. And, while my family was afraid was at first, and autism wasn't talked about as much at the time, it was a pretty scary future for me when they first found it out. For me, I had an obsession with cartoons. I watched cartoons every single day in my life for even up to this day, like I would still watch a cartoon every day. I was so obsessed with cartoons that I would, when we used to have video cassettes,
Yeah.
I would like pause. I would literally just pause it every time in front of me, like that's how, and just keep pressing the pause button to like do it frame by frame, because that's how it was. And that transition into a hobby, because I always wanted to know what it is like to have my own cartoons and my own set characters.
And also, just piggyback off that, when I was diagnosed much later when I was 15, you see, like when I was growing up, I've always felt that there was something different about me. Like this was like the 1990s. No one really knew what autism was. Like, there was, but it wasn't to the extent that it is today. And I was able to have a couple friends growing up, but like when it comes to like conversations and social situations, I always had this anxiety, and that really like made me so worried. It was hard for me to really articulate that, hard for me to really express that, and then it got worse in the early years of high school that I had a breakdown and had to be hospitalized. And it was at that point that I was diagnosed with being autistic, or back then Asperger's, which was on the autism spectrum at the time. And when I learned about that and learned about the symptoms, I was like, oh God, it makes sense. Not only did it make sense, I learned that I now know something that I have, but also I'm not the only one who has this. So since then, I was able, since looking into it, I was able to know, okay, now I know myself better. And there's nothing wrong with me. I am who I am. And due to that, I was able to advocate more for myself.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I was able to advocate for myself. Continuing from the story, when I went to middle school, when I transitioned from elementary to middle school, I realized the social environment was very, very different. So so the first thing I did was just look around the social environment, and that's what I did for myself to get around school. And of course, when I started drawing, I also was taught a class called social skills, which basically talks about social scenarios and how to interact with people, make friends, and how to deal with social situations. But when I put the two together, I started showing off my artwork to people. I would do like flip books. That was the first thing I did. I would do flip books and show them to all different students, and that helped me gain confidence within myself. It helped me gain more friends and relationships as the years of school went on.
Yeah.
And that's what I was able to do.
Right, and also going back to like how I was able to gain confidence and interest, because I remember this one time in college, I was talking to one of my friends who I'm still friends with to this very day, and she was interviewing me for a project in school, like she was in education, and regarding like autism, and she was in an education class, and I told her like how I see things, how when I listen to a song I see a story, and every time I think of a situation it reminds me of a certain song, and it was the first time I really expressed that, and she found that to be very amazing, how it like, especially like for instance there's a song called Mighty Love. When I hear that song it reminds me of a mother and a child, so using that has been so that would help me to help express my interests and show that hey, they're not boring, they're very interesting.
So basically, from our first question, you have multiple obsessions that you had as a child, and you were able to find, and you were telling me you were able to find yourself, like that you had autism and stuff, and being able to know yourself has helped you advocate for yourself a lot better.
Seeing things through stories.
Yes. So, my thing was, like I said, I took an obsession from drawing and not only turned it into a hobby, but used it as a tool for advocating for myself. after that, I was able to learn from my friends and peers about other social skills and such. So, my thing is, what are some of the ways that you express self-advocacy?
Well, one of the ways I express self-advocacy is really knowing, going back to what I said, knowing myself and what I feel can help me to achieve my goals in life. Like, for example, like I wanted to learn more social skills. So when I was in college, I got myself, advocated myself by joining certain groups, like that I feel would help me with those social skills, and that helped me just being there and just living at the school, like advocate. That's a way for myself to advocate for myself, to get myself out there to understand the social skills much more.
One of my ways that I express the self-advocacy is, well, one thing is when I first started advocating for myself, I first started drawing and showing people my artwork. When I started making enough friends and stuff, because I was able to have people that were willing to teach me a few things, like some people with autism can take advantage of sometimes. So I had to learn that. So I had to.
That could be tough.
I had to figure out a way to advocate myself in terms of some of the bad aspects of the social skills, like people taking advantage of me, and that's one of the most, that's what has happened to me before. I've also been picked on in school before, so that wasn't always easy. So I had to, I either had to say something or I had to get some help from another person, even if it had to be from another teacher.
Right.
So that's what helped me express self-advocacy. Now, I'm sure we have done this a lot in school. Now, going into the third question, what have your experiences in school, or how have your experiences in school shaped your self-advocacy?
Well, I think the first thing was in high school when I was diagnosed as autistic. That really was the starting point towards being a self-advocate. And then as I went forward, through college, I was able to really, be more capable of expressing who I was and what I have and how it's a part of me. That was really something that helped build on my self-advocacy. And as I grew old, and as time went on, when I was in grad school, and also, especially when I was adult, knowing that when I need to find a job, I need to work on things such as interview skills to help me to obtain that goal of getting my first job. So that really has helped me.
And that was the experience you have applied your self-advocacy in school?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of my experiences in school that has shaped my self-advocacy is in when I would go to class, and I'm in a classroom, and I go up to somebody and see a cartoon. They would get a reaction. Sometimes they'll get a good reaction. Most of the times they get a good reaction because a lot of people like the flip books and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they just don't. Sometimes they don't like it. But then sometimes they're too busy to look at it. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they'll take a little time, and I learn it that way to try to start talking to people better.
Yeah.
Initiating conversations better.
Mm-hmm.
When I would hang out with my friends, like this is like outside of school, but still we were going to school and stuff. But I would go hang out with my friends, and we would go meet new people, and I would just kind of, look at what's going on in the situation right now. I try to study the social situations as I hang out with my friends.
Yeah, that's how I was in college. I was kind of, since it was I went to a really big high school, and I was living, and my undergrad, Concordia College of New York, was very small, was much smaller than my high school. At the time, it's much larger now, but at the time, 800, 900 student school. So it was very tight knit. So I was able to better through that. Like really, it was a learning process.
So I know, so after high school, we grow up, we leave high school, and we become adults.
Right.
And sometimes, you know, and obviously the real world can be very crazy and confusing place.
God, yes.
Especially for people with autism like us, it was really hard to learn about the real world, let alone like interact with the real world.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to ask you this, Bobby, and this is a big question that I would love to see a lot of people with autism benefit from this. What challenges have you faced as an adult and self-advocate with autism?
Oh, this is a good one.
Could you give me a good story?
Okay, so I guess the story-wise, I think the thing that overall this helped was when I was trying to find employment. Like, you know, like it's when you go in for an interview, like the skills you need for the interview are not the skills you would need for the job per se. And it's like it felt like you had to be perfect at it. And, you know, to me, I had, my anxiety would come into play. And, you know, I would be afraid, am I not looking someone straight in the eye? Are my hands getting clammy? So that was a challenge that I had. And also just going through that process. Also just, you know, trying to really think about, like, it was mostly employment that was an issue for me. Another thing is really just trying to understand social cues. Like, even though I gained much from college, like, there was still so much I needed to learn. Like, was that person being sarcastic? Was that person being angry? It was so hard for me to understand.
It is hard to distinguish that.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. Like when someone's like it's either when someone's like busting your balls or just being plain mean.
Yeah.
That can be hard to distinguish a lot.
Oh,
I get that at work sometimes. It gets tough to distinguish that. But you know, what I usually do, I try to my best to play along with it.
Mm-hmm.
At the same tone. You know, I don't try to use any emotion for it. That's what I usually do when someone tries to either bust my balls or like bully me. And after that, the only way to distinguish it is if they have like a much more meaner, angrier tone. That's how I try to distinguish it.
Yeah, and for me, like some people, they express how they're feeling without showing much facial expression. So for me, like, I can, if someone has a very, like, you know, very emotional face, like, you can easily see if they're angry or happy, like, that was, like, I can understand that, but there's people out there who don't really do that, and, you know, can tell if they're angry or happy. And you know what the thing is? Going back to what you were saying, how cartoons were helping you, it feels like, you know, in an animated character, you can easily tell if someone's happy or sad or angry.
Yeah.
But in reality, it's so difficult to understand that.
One of my challenges that I faced as a self advocate is that I was always used to, when I first started working at Rite Aid, that was one of my first jobs. That actually took me employed, and it did take me a while to get employment. For a while, I didn't get a job until like I turned 18 years old. But I can remember like interacting with the customers and stuff. I was always around people my age every day, and I never knew that an adult could like not like me or hate me or treat me the same way or bully me the same way as people my age would. So that was one of the first things I realized. And you know, I'm realizing how like even bad people can get away with certain things. You know, that was one of my it's one of my challenges, you know, to deal with those types of people. But one of the challenges, and the hard thing too is trying to make a living out of what you love to do.
Yeah.
That's another big thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, like when I was hospitalized, and that was when I was diagnosed, I really like was able to see like other kids who were in that same like unit. Like they weren't autistic, but they still had issues going. They had issues going on with them, and that's when I wanted to go into counseling as like a therapist. Like I was able, like from that situation and using those therapeutic skills to become an advocate for fellow autistic individuals. And to this day, I have an LCSW in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and currently work with autistic individuals, autistic teens, and I feel like the skills that I gained as a self-advocate and through school learning like therapist skills helped me to build up what I am.
And you believe that's what you've done to overcome the challenges as an adult.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
One of the biggest things that has actually helped me overcome the challenges as an adult self-advocacy was actually I had a tattoo artist that he had a small tattoo shop at the time, and he was doing like a little event called Tattoos for Autism. It was specifically for people with tattoo people, for people who knows people with autism and stuff. So I had a couple friends of mine who had tattoos in honor of me. And I thought that was not only one of the coolest things that ever happened to me, but it was a sign that I overcame all of the stigma of autism. All the bad things that people, that certain people would say about autism.
Right.
So that's why. And then I started drawing autism posters.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was in 2014. I had a couple year hiatus until I started drawing it back up again in 2016 because I wanted to learn a little bit more about business, and I didn't know much about it at the time. But when I started finishing the series, I put it in the libraries, and the next thing I knew, people started contacting me, not just for commissions, but they actually wanted me to speak. They wanted me to speak in front of people. About what inspired me to do the posters, and that is how I believe I overcame most of the challenges that I faced as an adult self-advocate.
Yeah, and those challenges, like I'm able to overcome obstacles with it, and sometimes it can still be a challenge, especially anxiety. And there have been times where I felt like beaten down. Like I remember at this one job I had, like this was like years ago. This was like when I was younger. I remember a supervisor, like I was able to tell them I'm autistic, and I was able to, what's the word what's the word where you tell them like
Conspire?
No, not conspire. To
self-disclose.
Self-disclose. Thank you.
Closure.
Yeah, because I was able to self-disclose because I felt I thought what, maybe I don't know, it's not gonna affect me. Like I'm still gonna stay professional. However, she told me once that I think your anxiety is I see your anxiety as a competence, which didn't make sense to me. And also I remember being told also years ago, people are taken aback. Although those are very defeating things to say to someone, like I was able to say to myself, well, you know what? You don't know me. I can do great things, and I'm going to continue to do so.
So you had a moment where like someone told you you're never going to do this type of thing.
Exactly. And the same thing happened even before that, like when I was in high school. This was a year after my hospitalization. I was a junior, and there was there's a psychologist who went around to the schools and do evaluations, evaluated me, and I told them the things I want to do. Like, I want to live away at school, and and then a few weeks later, in the mail, I received my evaluation, which thank God I'm able to read that. Like, I had permission to read that, and it said in the end, Robert was a smart kid. Basically said, I'm a smart kid, but having him living away in college due to his diagnosis is unrealistic. Well, guess what? I lived away for college for 4 years. I was able to gain friends, gain a career, and I was able to do great things. So one thing in life is, yes, there's going to be people who are going to put you down. There's people who are going to chip away at everything that you want to accomplish. But the thing is, you can't let that stop you. Keep going. Prove them wrong. Are there going to be failures in life? Are you going to fail certain things? Okay, yes, but don't let that stop you. You have the potential to do great things.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. My thing is, as an adult, when I show off my work, sometimes it's hard because sometimes you think that it's like everybody's just so busy with their own things.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and honestly, it's part of it's the truth because everybody's got their own responsibilities. But when it all comes down to it, the more you show off, the more I show off my work, the more better it's gonna be and plus people are gonna know it because the more you show it off to them, and then people start talking about it.
Exactly.
And I can remember showing my work off to so many people in school for so many years that people know me as that type of person that shows off their work and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it may be hard now because everybody has responsibilities.
Yeah.
But the more we do it, the more better we become.
Yeah. And you're right. It can be hard because it's like, but that doesn't stop you.
No.
That doesn't stop you. And who knows? The person you might show that art to, they might show it to another person, and to another person. Like they'll share it to other people, and then they'll contact you, and you can gain some networking from that.
All right. Well, what time is it, Bobby? Because I think we got some time for some audience questions.
It is 2:22.
All right. Anybody ask some questions from the virtual audience, or what about you, Jim? What do you want to ask?
I have a question, which you kind of answered about self-disclosing. So, for a question for each of you, have you always self-disclosed in every employment situation?
Self-disclose, like telling people about
that you're autistic?
I usually
in the job interview.
You want to go first, Bobby?
Well, for me in the job interview, I don't, because I just want to show at the interview. I just want to show them like what my skills are and how I would be good for the job. Afterwards, if I feel comfortable with someone I work with, if I feel comfortable self-disclosing that, like I would. But it might take some time because, especially after what happened that one time many years ago, like it really have to feel comfortable and like I'm confident in saying that, but I feel confident in saying it, but I just want to make sure if this person can respect me for who I am. Hope that answers the question.
Yep. I mean, to go along with that, I mean, the culture in the business world has supposed to have changed over the past years, and supposed to be getting more disability friendly, for want of another word, so that people are judged on their skills and not on their ability, not on the disability.
Yeah.
So, have you actually seen that over the years?
I've seen that. I think it's slowly getting better with that. It is slowly getting better. It's much better, especially when I started looking for my first job after grad school.
Mhm.
For me, I usually tell a lot of people. At first, I didn't. It was a little bit. I figured when I told someone that I had autism, I kind of thought of it as not a bad disability, but I just thought of autism as a disability, and I was a little insecure about it. But as soon as my friends started getting those tattoos, it made me way more confident to tell everybody that I had autism, and to tell the people what I went through, so that people would understand me a little more. And now at new jobs and when I meet people that are new, I try to tell people that I have autism so that they have a better understanding of me, and that way they have a better understanding for me, and we can start off a lot better rather than just like misunderstanding each other, having the people ask me why am I doing all these quirky moves.
Right.
Because sometimes I still do it to this day, and people would just end up questioning it, or they'll assume that I'm on drugs. So that's why I try to disclose it as much as possible. So that way, I don't. That usually I usually do it in the reason to not get as judged as much, but also to start a new bond and create that bond from there. And it has happened a lot in my life before.
I agree with all of that, at least in my experience, and I'm not autistic, so, but I know a lot of kids, young adults, whatever, who have gone through different things, and you don't want people misunderstanding who you are. So that, at times, clarifies it and why you do certain things the way you do them. And it can only help, the guy on the other side of the table understand you better, and then hopefully ask you the right questions and don't assume certain things.
Does anybody ever have any other questions? Any other common questions or something? Or virtual
I have
questions?
a lot, but I don't know what to say.
Well, what, you can pick which one. Pick which one you want to ask.
I don't know which one to pick.
And you have to speak up because we don't have a microphone.
Okay. I don't know if you can answer this one. I don't know, but why did the I don't know if you guys know this question, but why did the puzzle piece have to be a symbol?
Oh, why does it have to be a symbol of autism?
Why they pick the puzzle piece as a symbol?
I think I know what you're asking. Why did they choose to pick the puzzle piece as the logo for autism? Well, they used. I'm not sure what company I think there's an organization that used it first, and I think everybody else just used it after that.
But there's a lot of, especially autistic advocacy groups that do not use the puzzle piece at all.
Right.
So
I'm just asking,
use,
why did they use
the
that?
infinity sign. That's been used a lot.
I don't think I think they used it. I think in a means of because there's only so much they knew back then. I'm thinking they may have used it for as a complexity or a mystery type of thing, because autism comes in many varieties. It's not us that have autism. There's some people with autism that don't know how to speak as much as we do.
Yeah,
There's some people with autism that don't know how to do as much things as we do. Not just because they're dumb. It's just because autism is a complex thing. It's just that.
And I think a lot of groups, especially for autistic adults, are streaming away from the puzzle piece, because there's been groups that say that the Cure Autism group, because of that, I'm not a fan of the Cure Autism groups. I'm not a fan of them. So a lot of more groups today are streaming away, are not going to be using the puzzle piece, and they're more using a Finny sign, saying that we're not a disease, we're part of a neurodiversity.
Yeah, like, do we have to take like a medicine for it to get rid of it, or?
I don't know if there's gonna be a medicine. I never really looked into a medicine. I think the only thing that we can do right now is to, interact with the people with autism as much as we can, guide them, help them, teach them, and also, in addition, if they have an obsession, don't exploit it as a weakness, use it as a strength, because who knows what that obsession can lead to.
Yes, let them be who they are.
That obsession, like, for example, if someone's obsessed with, like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they could either be...
They could just like the show,
They could be, like, they could either work in a sewer, because they have a lot, sewer's got a lot to do with the show, or they could be, like, fighting crimes, like cops, or they could do, if they're, that's what I mean. They could branch off of that obsession.
Right. Yeah. So, any other questions?
I mean, I have a lot.
Actually, I want to say something about the puzzle piece. I think what the puzzle piece should represent is a building block. Because...
Well, you can't really figure it out. You can't really figure out the puzzle until you put it all together. You know what I mean?
Right. And I feel like the puzzle piece is represented as a building block. For when one with autism has accomplished something big, another piece gets added onto it. And another one gets added onto it as soon as they do another accomplishment, and another one, and another one, and another one, until they become full-grown adults and they become fully blown puzzles.
Right. I think that's really what it is, because my daughter's autistic too, and it's just a matter of, to us it just meant that you have to find all of the solutions and all of the pieces of her puzzle, because she's a unique individual, and she is who she is, different than Bob or Nick or Julia, and each person is unique, and that's kind of what that signifies. Each person has many pieces to put themselves together, and it can take a long time to figure out what they all are and who they are.
For some it can.
Yeah.
For some it can.
Well, that's true too, because autism is a spectrum and goes from one end to the other end.
Like, what happens if, like, you guys, like, a teen doesn't know what to say or do in, like, your sessions?
If a teen doesn't know, like, what to do?
If they just, like, blank out, or, like, if they don't know what to say,
Well, we gotta start where they are. We gotta fit.
Like, if they don't know if, like, then they do something else in, like, your session,
Like, alright, what do you mean?
Like, if they, like, walk away and don't come back to your session.
Well, everyone needs to focus on where they are, basically. Where they are, what they want to accomplish.
If they're a little bit, are you saying, are they maybe a little bit stubborn, maybe?
Yeah, like, they, like,
Well,
if you guys...
I always ask somebody I would ask a couple questions to start off with.
Like, what if, like, can't, like, they, they play on their phone and then they just don't, like, they just don't want to talk to you.
I can try to remember from experience, because I've experienced something like that where I was stubborn before. I would have teachers ask me, or they would offer me a couple, like, things in case if I do get involved, maybe they'll offer me a couple rewards. I think that has happened before. But first I usually ask the questions. But if it doesn't work, maybe you can offer them like a reward or something, like maybe you can offer them a reward, because that's what's happened to me when people would try to get me to respond, and I would get stubborn.
Yeah, just, when I mean, like, focus where they are, see what they want, and see what they want, like, when they're ready,
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Yep, there's a question on here.
All right. What does he got?
The question is, how old were you when you had your first job?
How old was I in my first job? I was 18 years old. I was 18 years old, I worked at Rite Aid, and I started there at April 7th, up until May of 2015. And I left that job to find better opportunity.
And me, my first job, well, I know early in high school, like, it was hard for me to get, like, a part-time job, you know, because, you know, with the difficulty of understanding social situations, social cues, it was really hard for me, even though I applied to many places. They didn't have, like, those types of, like, services like they do now for teens, for autistic teens. But I did, like, you know, odd jobs for people, and I did, like, you know, I did some cleaning jobs, I did some painting, I did some here and there, especially like during the holidays and summer. But my first real technical job was after I graduated high school. During the summers, I would be a janitor at my high school in the summer maintenance crew. It was a full-time job, and I enjoyed it. Saved me a lot of money for the upcoming college year.
Cool.
Did that for 4 years.
You know what? I have a good question that I just thought for myself. How did we get through the pandemic as autistic individuals? Because let me tell you something. This pandemic has certainly hurt both of us.
Let me tell you something.
I want to ask you this. How did you get through 2020 right now to today as a person with autism?
Oh man, it's had to be one of the most difficult situations I've ever been to. And of course, like, it's been difficult for a lot of people, like, in many certain ways. Like, socially, like I said, I've had anxiety so much. Like, I've had so much anxiety, just the fear that really just, you know, I was able to, I was able to still keep the job I have. I was able to still see my fiance.
Why help him out?
Yeah, I know, babe.
Like, you know, but I help out with the COVID too.
Yeah, and also just I was able to do that. Like, thank God I was able for that. But just the unknown, you know, especially in the news, the whole unknown situation. Like, when people even joke around saying it's the apocalypse, that got me so worked up to the point of like, feeling like I don't want to go there. But yeah.
2020 was a really scare factor. It was a scare factor at first for me. When the pandemic first hit, I actually used to be pretty scared of the pandemic. And not just because I was, but they've blown, like, I've heard every single day, you see it on the TV, you even go on Facebook, on social media, even when they joke about it, it's all says pandemic, 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 pandemic. And it did scare me for a little while. But when I realized that, you know, I had my friends who I was hanging out with, and I do landscaping. So my hands are dirty every day. I go into Wawa, and I walk by a bunch of people every day. It's after for so long, and I go on Facebook, and you know, even though people joke about it, I try to use a little critical thinking to see why they joke the way they joke around.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, no one wants to be scared or sad or angry about this. You know, we want to live life. So that's how, you know, I try to think, okay, maybe that's how some people cope with the pandemic, and you gotta let it be. My thing is that I overcame it by hanging out with my friends and going to work every day and realizing and reevaluating myself and looking back to how far I came from drawing into all of this to today. Public speaking, you know, I would go out and hang out with people with autism. I call that mentoring, but social work, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And
I do
landscape.
mentoring too.
I was able to realize those 3 skills I could also use too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what also helped me get through 2020.
Yeah, because for me, like I said, thank God I the whole time been trying to really maintain positive like mindset, optimistic mindset. Things are going to get better, which they are. Things are going to get better.
Right.
But I was always afraid. But if I expressed that type of optimism, I'm afraid people were going to chip away at it or look down on me for having that positive mentality. But especially during this time. But I've been able to realize that I have to have this. This is something that's keeping me going every day. Like, things aren't going to be perfect, but you have to still, just because things aren't going to be perfect doesn't mean that you can't be optimistic.
Right. Yeah, like I said, art, the pandemic really hurt me, and also, like, art-wise, the libraries were all shut down. Well, some of them are open now, but they still do limited service. There's still, there's still bars and many different social places with limited capacity, so there's not much that I could do. And, like I said, that was a big depressor. That was a big depressor. But I had to realize that, it's not going to be like that forever.
No.
It's not going to be like that forever, and
No.
because of that, I tried my hardest to figure out where to start back up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how I got through the pandemic as an adult. Now I'm not really as scared of it as much,
Yeah. Same here. I'm starting not to be as scared.
Yeah. Any other questions any other questions?
Not from online, but I have a question,
Yes.
unless Julia has a question.
You can
All right.
go.
All right,
I have
so-
a lot.
So my question
I can't believe
is,
when I know.
have you found groups where you can share your experiences and learn from your experiences? And by groups, I mean whether they're social groups or in-person groups
I found one.
or meetups or whatever it is. So I think other people who are autistic, they may have the same need to reach out, connect.
I found one.
Okay. What did you find?
GI.
Oh, J-High?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
For me, I found, this even years ago, around 2015, I found, this group Socializing on the Spectrum. And it was just people it was a group in, where was it? Narberth?
Yeah, Narberth.
Narberth. Yeah, I was it.
That's where I met you.
Yep, exactly.
And
That's
Julia.
where I met my fiance Julia. Yeah.
And I found one. I did New Horizons. I did.
Yeah, the Horizons.
Yeah, I did. I have one on. Did I do another one that it's like counseling. We do it's called CFC counseling, and Abby and Ashley does it.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
There's two of them, right?
Yeah.
Two women. Yep,
Yeah.
I know them. Okay. Cool.
For me, if I found any social groups, I haven't reached out social groups with the same needs as that I had. But I've reached out to groups that are better socialized than me. Like, I had a group of friends that were better socialized
Sure.
than me, so I can naturally learn from them and become better as we go through many different social situations. So that's how I was able to be able to speak better, and that's how I was able to speak better.
And we have a response that just says, a mom says, my 14-year-old son appreciates your insights, especially with the pandemic.
Oh, how we appreciate that, man. I'll tell you what, man, it's a very scary time, but listen, it's not scary when you have everything that you really need. What you need is, what you love to do.
Yep. And it's not going to be forever.
It isn't going to be forever. Nope.
Right.
Anything else?
No.
No, Julia doesn't. I don't have any more questions.
Yeah, I don't either.
All right, I think that's just about it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys.
Hey, no problem, man. I
It was
really
awesome.
appreciate this. I really appreciate everybody virtually watching this.
Yeah.
This has been a very informative speech, our first informative speech. I'm sure this is a big, our first one for certain. So this is a very progressive duo, but for the two of us, and we made this by ourselves. You know, we've had help from Jim Worcester for hosting this
Yes,
at the
thank you,
Kelly
Jim.
Arts Center. Thank you so much for everything. And I want to
We
thank
got
the
plenty of room. You can
audiences.
come back anytime.
Yup. Thank you guys for watching this. This is a bit of self advocacy. We're gonna make this better, man. This is progress. We got
Yep,
this.
we got this.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.
Have a wonderful day.
All right.
Thank you.